Now, we have specification number 7, and here they are asking us to explain the role of the ribs, the internal and external intercostal muscles, and the diaphragm in breathing. So, in this part, we're going to learn about the process of breathing, specifically, how these muscles work together to help us inhale and exhale. We'll look at how the intercostal muscles and the diaphragm function differently during the two main phases of breathing, inhalation and exhalation. These muscles play a key role in changing the size and shape of the chest cavity, which directly affects how air moves in and out of the lungs. So, let's understand each part and how it contributes to the breathing mechanism. When we talk about the mechanism of breathing, breathing is a continuous, rhythmic process that allows air to flow in and out of the lungs. This process depends on changes in the volume and pressure inside the thoracic cavity, or chest. When the volume of the chest cavity changes, the air pressure inside it also changes, and that's what causes air to move either into or out of the lungs. These movements are mainly controlled by three key structures: the ribs, the intercostal muscles, both internal and external, and the diaphragm. Together, they work in perfect coordination to expand or reduce the chest cavity, making breathing possible. First, let's talk about what happens during inhalation, also known as inspiration. During this phase, the external intercostal muscles contract, pulling the ribs upward and outward. This movement causes the ribcage to expand, creating more space inside the chest. As the ribcage expands, the lungs also inflate, following the movement of the chest wall. At the same time, the diaphragm contracts and flattens downward, which increases the vertical space of the thoracic cavity. The abdominal muscles remain relaxed, allowing the abdomen to bulge slightly as the diaphragm moves downward. All these coordinated actions together increase the volume of the thorax. As the volume increases, the air pressure inside the lungs decreases, becoming lower than the external atmospheric pressure. Because air naturally moves from a region of higher pressure to lower pressure, it flows into the lungs through the nose and trachea. So, in simple terms, the contraction of the external intercostal muscles and diaphragm creates space and draws air inward, allowing us to breathe in. Now, let's look at what happens during exhalation, also known as expiration. During this process, the external intercostal muscles relax, allowing the ribs to move downward and inward under the influence of gravity and the action of the internal intercostal muscles, which may contract more strongly during forced exhalation. At the same time, the diaphragm relaxes and moves back to its dome-shaped position, which reduces the vertical size of the thoracic cavity. These combined actions decrease the volume of the chest cavity. As the volume decreases, the air pressure inside the lungs increases, becoming higher than the external atmospheric pressure. Because air naturally moves from a region of higher pressure to lower pressure, it is pushed out of the lungs and expelled through the nose or mouth. The ribcage becomes smaller as the lungs deflate, and the abdominal muscles recoil elastically, returning the abdomen to its normal resting position. In simple terms, the relaxation of the external intercostal muscles and diaphragm, along with the recoil of the lungs, forces air outward, completing the breathing cycle. To sum up, we have this table here. As we can see, the table clearly compares inhalation and exhalation in terms of muscle actions, thoracic volume, air pressure, and air movement. During inhalation, the diaphragm contracts and flattens, while the external intercostal muscles contract, pulling the ribs upward and outward. These coordinated actions increase the volume of the thoracic cavity. As a result, the air pressure inside the lungs decreases, becoming lower than the outside air pressure. Because air naturally moves from a region of higher pressure to a region of lower pressure, air flows into the lungs. On the other hand, during exhalation, the diaphragm relaxes and returns to its dome-shaped position, while the internal intercostal muscles may contract, pulling the ribs downward and inward. This causes the volume of the thoracic cavity to decrease, which in turn increases the air pressure inside the lungs. Since the pressure inside is now higher than the external air pressure, air is forced out of the lungs. So, to put it simply, inhalation increases chest volume and draws air in, while exhalation decreases chest volume and pushes air out. This rhythmic expansion and contraction maintain the continuous flow of air, allowing efficient gas exchange to take place in the alveoli.